I see what ho, chaps and chappets, Game Chap and Bertie here.
Yes.
Yes, indeed, fellows, and I dare say we are now discussing here a rather interesting gaming controversy which seems to have arisen over the Nintendo 3DS game Senran Kagura 2 Deep Crimson.
We most certainly are, yes indeed. Now, of course, the Senran Kagura series is a series of games that's been run, which basically involves fighting girls.
That's right, or girls fighting, actually.
Yes, indeed. Now, in the past, it has raised some controversy, and of course, it is a Nintendo game.
Yes, that's right, primarily on Nintendo platforms, but people in the past have voiced opinions, quite strong in some cases opinions, over the game and the sorts of things it does. But nothing quite like this latest report, which comes to us from a Swedish newspaper. It's quite outlandish, really, old chap.
It most certainly is indeed. Yes, now this newspaper has reported, a reporter or whatever, and said that they believe it's Nintendo's responsibility to ban Senran Kagura 2. Just ban the whole game.
Ban the game?
Yes, because they say it's on their family-friendly platform.
I see. Okay, so this newspaper in Sweden is actually calling for an outright ban on this game in Sweden, presumably, and perhaps they even might be suggesting the world, goodness me. Now, of course, we just discussed, did we not, a ban on Minecraft, which is perhaps similarly outlandish, and the question is, of course, this particular game, Senran Kagura, what does it contain, and does it warrant a ban?
Well, most certainly. Now, as we know, it contains ladies, girls fighting.
That's right.
From some form of college, and they're like ninjas, etc. And you go around fighting things, etc. so forth. Now, this paper has further gone on to say that the game objectifies and has an unnatural view of women.
Really?
This is what they're saying.
So they're playing on the female card here, whereby you can't portray these women in this way, it's just not right, all that sort of thing.
Well, they're playing it on that. Of course, there has been some controversy with this game in the past because of their various the way the girls act and the clothing, etc., so forth. But we've got to ask ourselves: we see there's that in it, and we understand it's a Nintendo game, but should we not have ladies fighting? I mean, can't ladies fight the same as men?
Well, exactly. I mean, you do have to ask the question. Perhaps the reporter in question hasn't actually played the game, I'm not sure. But if you have played the game, you may be aware that the two ninja schools in the game actually fight for their own causes. For example, one of the ninja schools fights for justice and for good, whilst the other ninja school fights for evil, basically. They're like government agents who assassinate people, you see. So you've got this underlying story. And actually, a lot of the story elements, they aren't sort of going on with innuendos all the time. There is actually a lot of themes of, honour and justice and the good guys winning in the story, and I mean, sometimes the story writing is actually very good. At certain points it might even cause you to shed a tear. There's a lot of thoughtful work gone into the story, so it's not perhaps, as some people might have you believe, just over the top innuendos and certain parts visible all the time, etc. and so forth.
Most certainly, yes, there is a story to it, and I think we're showing some gameplay as we speak here.
Yes.
For the chaps and chapettes to see and evaluate this for themselves and actually say what they think about it. Of course, there is the innuendo side to it.
Yes.
There's some questionable poses, there's some questionable bursting out of clothing, etc., so forth going on.
Things popping out, yes.
Some people may raise an eyebrow to, and I suppose we've got to say, well, hang on, this is a Nintendo game. It is on what should be a family-friendly platform, but Nintendo seem to be okay with it.
That's right, and of course I think you have to ask yourself the question of, family-friendly. We have actually seen plenty of 18-rated games on the Nintendo platform, both 3DS and Wii U in the past. We had Zombie U, Call of Duty, and many other titles, of course, many of which are just not appropriate for children at all, and yet those games weren't banned, so the question I'd have to ask is, well, why would you want to ban this one then?
Well, most certainly, yes, indeed. We've got to ask that question, or they have to ask that question, or whatever. People, general buyers of the game, must ask that question.
Yes.
But they're trying to suggest, this paper further went on to say, that anyone who develops it, or even buys the game, should be ashamed.
Really?
And they become an automatic part of this objectification.
I see.
Bold and...
We've got that old chestnut again, haven't we, old chap?
Have.
So anyone that takes part, therefore, in Call of Duty should be ashamed and is part of this murdering, I suppose, by the same token. And of course, just because you play or make a game that shows a certain thing does not mean that you automatically accept everything to do with it. Of course, it's just not the case. Just because games are played doesn't mean that the people who play them necessarily want to go and kill people, or they want to go and, do unspeakable things to ladies, etc. and so forth. It's it's not the truth. So I think we have to draw the line here between virtual games and reality and understand that they are two separate things, old chap.
Well,
one is for
certainly.
entertainment and one is real life. And of course, we know how to keep the two divided.
Well, most certainly, but I think we've also got to ask the question, or the question has to be asked, or should I say people will ask the question, no doubt, do we need to have these? I mean, the idea of Ninja Girl is fine, and they're sort of in this college, and they're ninja trainees, or whatever it may be.
Yes.
But do we have to have them bursting out of their clothing?
Ah, well, of course, indeed, there are certain features of the game to show the opposite side there, Fiddles, whereby you can actually dress up your girl in chosen outfits. You can select what she'll appear like in battle, her shinobi outfit, her regular outfit, and of course her under outfit, if that's your idea. And of course, as Birdie says there, sometimes things do pop out in the battles, etc. and so forth, all in eye-popping 3D, no doubt, of course. So there is that element to the game, as well as various innuendos and little jokes and things that are made here and there in the series. And of course, that's part of the series. But again, you have to ask yourself, the age rating of this game is of course clearly stated on the box, and of course it's not necessarily being targeted by Nintendo towards a certain age group. And I think perhaps Nintendo are saying to themselves, well, yes, we've got games like Call of Duty, which are very, very violent. We've got games like Senran Kagura, which appeals to another sector. And of course, all of these games are okay with us because they're targeted by the rating system to certain groups of people, and so therefore they're fine.
Well, yes, there is that to it. And of course, I mean, certainly in Japan, I believe where the game was developed, they have a very different outlook to perhaps some other parts of the world to this sort of thing. So we could say, well, okay, yes, we don't necessarily need to have these ninja girls popping out their clothing, etc.
No.
Certainly. But is that a reason to completely say, well, look, anyone that buys the game is some sort of a weirdo, and they're part of the shame, etc. Because we still have actually a very good underlying game there. There's a story to it. There's a storyline to it, which is quite good. The fighting animation,
justice, all that sort of thing.
The system is rather good.
Yes.
So should people feel bad about that if they just want to play the game? I mean, you may have a lot of girls out there and ladies that want to just play the game.
Yes,
they just enjoy playing the game. Are they then part of this terrible shame? We have to ask ourselves. Is that the question?
Certainly, you do have a lot of the overall motive of the game is actually giving each of these lady characters in the game their own personalities, their own strengths and weaknesses. They all have ways you can sympathise with them, and a lot of the characters are actually quite strong and willful in what they do. They don't mess around, and in some cases they do actually have to beat up gentlemen as well inside the game. So it's not a completely one-sided thing whereby they're just objects with no personality. And it's also, by the same token, not some game that's just involved where you just stare at ladies all day long. And I know there are some games like that out there, and perhaps they do fit that description of being just a very, very niche, if you will, to use a word. But this particular game doesn't fall into that category. It does have a clearly defined storyline. Some would say some exciting gameplay there with lots of action and slashing and combos and all that sort of thing as part of the fighting game experience. And so, therefore, I think perhaps to apply the automatic tag of ban to this game just because it has girls in it is perhaps in itself a little bit prejudiced, if you ask me.
Well, we don't really know. It's up to people to make that decision, of
Indeed,
course.
yes.
There are no doubt two sides to the story, but this does seem to be on the stronger side. So is it fair then to say, really, that this game must be discounted and blacklisted simply because it has girls in it all the time in this way? That question no doubt has to be asked. Now, whilst we're on that subject, of course, it should be noted that I believe the journalist within this newspaper has also been responsible for saying things like the colour of Lego bricks in Lego City Undercover, I beg your pardon, are not gender equal and things like that. Which,
right.
Well,
okay. Well, fair enough. To each their own, I suppose. But in any case, we're just picking up on what they had to say about this particular game for now. So, indeed, Senran Kagura, of course, then is not a game without controversy, Fedios. Many people do see it as just a game filled with ladies, but it's not just that. If you actually take the time to play the game, you'll find a rather interesting story there and some quite convincing characters, the way that they're emotionally presented, and indeed sometimes the game does tug on your heartstrings. So I think we're beginning to see here that we don't necessarily just have a one-dimensional game about ladies popping out of their clothes. There are more layers to the game, of course, and you have to ask the question, is it fair to ban something just because it has something in it that you don't personally like, just as in the same way other games like Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty can be very offensive in their own way at times, and yet those games aren't banned either.
Well, most certainly, there is that to it. So we've got this game here, very good gameplay, an interesting sort of game in many ways, the way it's been built, etc. But with, in some cases, eyebrow-raising elements to it, as we have already explained.
Indeed.
But does that mean it should be banned? I mean, are they banning all the films out there that have women in a suggestive way, etc.? We don't know. But what do you think, chaps and chappettes? Is this a game you'd play? Are you out there and a male or a female thinking, oh, I'd play this game, or no, I wouldn't play this game? What do you think, and what do you think Nintendo should do? Should they ban it, or should they just let it through and just have it as another game?
Indeed, what do you say, Fiddles? Does this game belong on Nintendo consoles? Should it be banned, or should it be perfectly playable by any person?
With the whole banning thing completely over the top?
Indeed, I say. Let us know your thoughts, Fiddles. This has indeed been Game Chat and Birdie reporting on a rather interesting gaming controversy. By George, I'm sure there's more and more of these controversies all the time, aren't there, old
There
chaps?
seems
It's getting
to be.
crazy these days.
Oh, yes.
Well, there you are. Thank you kindly for joining us, Fiddles, and we look forward to seeing you once more the next
yes.
exciting outing, my word. Until then.